Welcome to the Divorce and Real Estate Podcast, where we navigate the complex intersection of divorce and property.
Our mission is to provide crucial insights, expert advice, and empathetic support for those facing divorce and real estate decisions.
Each episode will provide you insight into the specific challenges and opportunities available
for your real estate during the divorce process,
along with expert advice from leading professionals in the field. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We are excited to have you back. And today we are going to be talking about what is important when selecting a real estate advisor during your divorce process or just in general. So we're going to jump in. And Asher, I'd love to hear from you on what do you think just top things that you have to have in any real estate advisor that you're working with?
Yeah, so if we're taking the divorce stuff out of this, we have to make sure that this real estate advisor understands what's happening in the market specific to the client, not just stats on what's going on nationally or even on a state level, but what's going on in the local market of where that client wants to buy, sell, invest, rent. They need to know that market knowledge. They need to have really good communication skills, not just with the client, but they have to have good rapport with other agents in the marketplace, because sometimes that's what's going to get the deal done for their client, just to have great rapport, right? So those two right off the bat. And then they also have to have good systems and processes in how the transaction is going to go, right? They need to know it in and out. They need to have a good support system around them, because everything sometimes in these days happens so quickly. And if you're not able to get something done like a document or get some information fast enough for the client, you might miss out on an opportunity, right? So those are the top three things that you should be looking out for when, interviewing and meeting with other real estate advisors.
Yeah. And so for those that have not maybe come to the podcast before, we work very closely together, particularly with clients that are going through a divorce process. And the reason we work really closely together and why I, as a divorce professional, am so picky about the realtors that I work with is this is not like any other opportunity to buy or sell a house. This is a completely new experience, and there's different rules and things to be conscious of when you're going through the divorce process. So Asher's team is someone that I refer to all of the time. And so why, Asher, from your perspective, do you think that your team works really well with my clients in working through the divorce process?
It's a great question. One thing is we have a lot of patience and we have a pretty high pain tolerance. So
Yes.
that could hurt someone's business sometimes, but it's really paid off for us. At the end of the day, we are in it to win it for our client. And it's not a win-lose situation. We just want to make sure that our client is winning. We don't need the other party to feel like they're losing and we're trying to take advantage of anything. But we want to make sure at the end of the day, the client is feeling heard and understood, and we're going after that goal in any way we can to help them. And that's, I would say, so patience is a key contributor here. And after working together with you and your team and with all of these different clients that are going through this situation, we've seen that some clients are fine about this whole divorce thing. Like it's not a dramatic thing all the time. And sometimes it is a very dramatic thing, and it is really, really tough for them. And it's a longer process just to cope and get through it. But one thing I personally noticed is, and why we really have a passion for helping these clients going through this situation is actually a personal experience. When growing up, around 5 years old, my parents got divorced, and it was really tough. It was really tough as a kid, and I saw the dynamics of not just how it affected us as a family unit, but also like my grandparents and friends and just all like the ripple effect that contributed to. Now luckily they got back together. They're still together. All is good. That's not always the case. But going through that experience at a young age and still remembering those moments, it really is gratifying to us and to me personally to get people through this in the best way possible. And one of the things that we really enjoy is just not the sales aspect of it, but just being there for them. Sometimes phone calls are not about the real estate transaction, and they just have to vent a little bit about maybe something going on in their day. And it could relate to the real estate transaction. Maybe it doesn't, but we're there. We're there for them. And that's a big differentiator for us and how we help them.
Yeah, I think that what's really, really important to me is always that my clients are on a roller coaster of emotions. They always are. And there's highs and there's lows. There's some people that they've been separated for years, and this is now just them kind of going through the legal process. Since they've worked through the emotions, there are people that are in the thick of the emotions. And all of my clients that have worked with your team just have really highlighted that you are there for them and that the communication works really well. And so I think one of those hard parts during a time of separation is that sometimes the couple communicates really well together and sometimes they don't, but they're both a part of the transaction. So your team has been really good about, are you communicating with both of them at the same time? Are you having to communicate with them individually and really understanding where they're at in terms of their comfortability with one another, rather than we have to all sit down and do this all together and maybe make it more uncomfortable for them than it needs to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have an example of that we can really dive into to help all of our listeners understand what that like communication style looks like. So let's give the example of someone that there's a divorced couple that are separating. They own a home together. Their goal is to sell that home and then individually go buy something or rent something on their own. So when it comes to the transaction of selling the home that they own together, the communication has to be to both of them equally. We are not like on one side. It's not we're on one side versus the other. We are on the side. The side is both of them when selling that property. So the communication has to be fluid with both of them. It's, email threads or text threads that have to do with just that transaction. Now, when one of them wants to talk about where they're going next, that's a personal thing just with them and us. And that's a separate text thread or email thread or conversation that is not needing to be involving the other party. And everyone really appreciates that because that is that confidentiality that they need on that transaction or what they're trying to do over here. And then the transaction that they're both a part of has to be fluid with everyone. So everyone's in the loop. Everyone understand what's the current situation, what's happening next in the process, and just making sure everyone's on the same page, because we've seen things on the other side of the transaction where we're not helping that person, we're helping someone else, but someone else is going through that divorce and things are not communicated properly and deals fall apart because one party in that transaction didn't feel like they knew what was going on. They got upset about it. They resented that. And then they just killed the deal that involved everyone killing, losing out on that deal too.
Yeah. And I think that just shows your expertise as well, because it's, again, talking about it as a different situation than your normal sale or purchase. It's not a couple that's selling their home and they're trying to find a new home at the same time. It's a couple in conflict trying to sell a home and then each having their own individual needs moving on. One could be renting and you help them find a rental. One could be buying. They could want very different things moving forward. And so it's juggling all of those parts and also all of the personalities and conflict and emotions that are associated with it as you go through those pieces. So that's just shows the expertise of your team to be able to manage all of those pieces. And that's what you mentioned too, with a real estate expert has good systems in place so that you can juggle all of those pieces.
Yeah, making the notes for everything, understanding things might change halfway through, but just keeping the communication fluid when needed. And not just the communication with the clients, but also making sure that before any decisions are made, we have to get back to you on certain things. Hey, where are we with that part of their divorce process? Or are we ready to list the home? Because as a real estate advisor, we're looking to list homes and help people buy every day.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it, right? And if someone tells me they want to list their home, I'm just ready to put the sign in the ground, get the pictures done, put it on the MLS as soon as humanly possible, because that's closer to me getting a paycheck.
Mhm.
Well, at the end of the day, that's not what's best for the client. We have to make sure, okay, do we have everything in place? So that's when we get back to you and communicate with you, with them on that email or not, just making sure, hey, are they ready to list their home, or do they still have to go through what they need to finalize with you, and then getting them in touch with the lender in regards to making sure that their money is right up front before listing their home, because some homes can sell in a day still. And if we're not ready and we don't have all of our ducks set up properly, then we could be putting them in a really dangerous position of not knowing what their options are moving forward.
Right. And that collaboration is so important because, again, people don't realize that this is all kind of a lineup that we have to make sure everything, all the ducks are in the right row. And so, as an example, months ago, I had clients who I had referred to you and they knew a friend that was a realtor. Everyone has a friend that's a realtor, a family member that's a realtor, or their friend's brother that's a realtor. There's nothing bad with that. It's not saying that those aren't good professionals, but at the same time, they don't always know the complexity of where we are here. They're not a real estate advisor and they're not working directly with me in collaboration. And so essentially what happened was this client decided to use their own real estate professional, whoever they wanted to use, but they used the mortgage professional I had referred to. Thank goodness, because wife went out and was trying to find a new home and had found and put an offer on the home. And the mortgage professional reached out to me and said, they're closing in 2 weeks. And I was like, well, we're not ready for them to close in 2 weeks. We don't have the legal documents that you're going to need to close. We don't have anything contractually written out that's going to show certain assets or debts that she's going to have or income to be able to actually solidify that loan. And so because their real estate professional wasn't communicating with us, then I had to get on the phone with the clients. We had to move their process and speed it up. And we were able to do that because we personalize it to what they need. But she almost lost the home because person she was working with didn't understand the implications of the divorce. And that's why that collaboration is so important, because she's on the phone and she's like, this is my dream home. And I'm like, well, we're going to do everything in our power to get it there. But if everyone had been communicating with our office up front and we knew who we were working with, we wouldn't have these barriers or these issues where now we're trying to rush.
Yeah, and as we say in the business, the deal is not done until it is done, until it is closed out.
Yes.
And it is a kind of a scary time for people. They're already going through this emotional thing, and everyone feels like the deal is done, but it really isn't. And that's on a normal transaction without the divorce happening. So we get asked often, is this normal? What's happening right now? Whatever that thing is. And I say, yes, it is normal. Like, we know the contract in and out, right? That's just that market knowledge, not just the market of the real estate, like stats of what's happening with homes and how quickly they're moving and pricing, but just the market knowledge of the contract. And in the contract in Arizona, the buyer has until 3 days before closing to get their financing approved. 3 days before. So we've already gone through all of these other contingencies like inspection and appraisal and the negotiations on all of those. But 3 days before, if they get a loan denial for whatever their reason is, they can supply that loan denial to the seller. And that seller is now giving that earnest money back. The title company gives the earnest money back to the buyer because that's part of the contract. That seller could have already moved out of the home in this time frame. And now they're starting back from relisting the home, right? And it's not to scare anyone, but that is the reality of it. So what we do is we do the best we can do, right? We can only control what we can control. And one of those controlling mechanisms is to check in with that buyer's lender often, at least once a week. How's everything going? Is there any red flags, right? And just tracking things and communicating with everyone. So again, it always goes back to communication, but sometimes in life things happen. Someone can lose their job, they get a loan denial, and that's what it is, right? So it's not done until it's done.
Well, and particularly in our situations where there's a lot of complexity, there's a lot of conflict, there can be a lot of hiccups along the way, just in where people are at. A great example is there typically needs to show that there is payment of support, for example. So child support or spousal maintenance, which is also known as spousal support or alimony, can be used as income to qualify for a loan. But there needs to be consistency in that being shown. And if there's not, that could throw a deal off. Or if something isn't written exactly how lending needs it in our documents, then it could be, well, now this debt looks like it's on you, and now your debt to income isn't, lining up. So it's been very helpful with my clients because I feel like your team is just always very calm, cool, and collected, and you're always looking for solutions when something goes wrong. Like it's not,
Yes.
oh, something went wrong and now we can't fix it. It's what are the 2-3 solutions or options that we have moving forward?
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, it does require more work in these situations, but it's okay because we know we're taking care of the client the best we can. So in that situation, and that's not just an example, we recently went through that where someone wasn't paying their child support or maintenance, and that person that we were helping, they weren't able to buy their home that they were all lined up to buy, and in the middle of selling their home and doing that, and it's emotional for them. It's emotional for us too. We feel for that client. And going into it, we were looking at rental options, homes for sale. And as we got closer to the end, and when we saw kind of this smoke, right, from this fire that was happening, essentially, we can say, yeah, this is an issue and good luck, and we can just kind of walk away. And that's just not how we roll, obviously, but we know some people do. So we said, no, let's get on the phone. Let's make sure that all the options are in front of this person. And let's be proactive and say, hey, we can try to still get that home. But in the meantime, we need to look at other options. We need to give advice on what this person can do as a temporary solution, and then more of a longer term solution, and then move from there. Right. And it was a really tough conversation to have with this person. There were tears. There was, it was tough. It was tough. And we made it through. She's in a great place right now, right? And it is okay, and it will be okay in the future. But those moments when someone needs us, we're going to be there. We're not going to hide from it. We're going to present it as soon as we can, and with solutions.
And that's why I'm just so grateful for your team, because my clients are going through one of the hardest things that they'll ever experience in their life. A lot of times the loss of a marriage is referred very closely to the loss of a loved one. And so it's something that's extremely challenging, and everyone's going to go through it in a different way, but your team is always there to anticipate those needs, check in if you need anything, and we can work collaboratively to do so. And I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest importance is just realizing that there's a lot of nuance and specialization when you're going through a separation. And so you want to make sure you have the right team on your side, because you could lose so much money, or, lose your home, or, have that team step away when you really need them because you didn't pick the right team in the first place. And so it's just choosing the right professionals from the get-go.
Yeah, and we said this on a previous episode, and I'm going to repeat it right now. there are people out there that look for signs of leverage that they can utilize. And we don't say when we're listing your home, when you're going through divorce, that you're going through a divorce. And there are a lot of real estate advisors out there that do. And that is putting you in harm's way when they are saying that, because someone hears that and thinks, oh, wow, like they need to just get out of this situation. So we can lowball them and we can try to take advantage of that situation. So there is experience needed in certain transactions. It's not like every other transaction. It's not like helping any other client with their real estate decisions and getting them through it. So, a big takeaway from today's session is, how to select your real estate advisor. Make sure they understand this process. Make sure they know how to empathize and work with you through this process. Make sure they understand it so that way they're not putting you in harm's way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us for episode 3. Please comment in the comment section if you have specific topics or questions that you're interested in, because we personalize the podcast based on people's interests and what they're looking for. And always reach out to both of our teams if you ever have any questions, because that's what we're here for.
Yep. And stay tuned for the next episode. It's going to be a great one.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.